So, hi everybody. My name's Darren. I run a company called Renewables, and I've got a few slides to share with you today. Hopefully, you can all see that on the screen. To do with community energy and sort of how to set up your own product or project. So a little bit of background about us. We've got involved in a number of community energy projects in Essex, and we've kind of developed a little bit of expertise. And obviously we're here today to try and share that expertise with you guys about how to do this. So first of all, let's sort of talk about community energy in terms of what is it. Um, there are hundreds of community energy groups and organizations across the country. And one of the things that you will find when you talk to these groups is they've all got a slightly different version of what they think the community energy is. And they will all tell you that their version of the community energy is what community energy is. But the short answer is it can pretty much be whatever you want it to be. There's no legal definition around what a community energy project has to be. There's no legal definition around what it has to achieve, how it should be set up, how it has to be run. But they're basically you can best set it up and run it any way that you see fit. Um, so there are two general ways that community energy groups get formed. Oh, hang on a sec. The first is you get a group that basically creates an organization, whether that's a co-op or a community interest company or something along those lines. They raise money from their local community and they use that to buy or build a renewable energy asset. So solar panels, anaerobic digester, wind turbine, water hydro scheme, something along those lines. And what these schemes generally do is they have one producer and what we call one off taker. So it might be, say, the local village school. They raise some money, they put solar panels on the local village school, and then they sell that energy to that school. Okay. There are lots of examples of this type of stuff. Bristol Community Energy, Brighton Community Energy, they all work on this sort of format. And then what they tend to do is they will use some of the profits that are made by selling that energy to the off taker to reinvest in either other community projects. That doesn't have to be back in the renewable side. It could be about increasing biodiversity or running clubs to engage with your local community. I've seen people where they've done sort of like a tea and cake club and they've used it to fund it so that they can get their local residents together in their village hall or whatever it is. So that's the first sort of theme that you will generally come across when you start talking about community energy. That's a group of people that get together, form an organization, raise some money, buy an asset, and then sell the energy from that asset to a single off-taker. The other type of community energy scheme that is out there, slightly different. So here it's about selling energy to the local people. Energy Local is a company that have predominantly championed this, and the idea is that um, normally through a co-op, you have a number of energy assets that could be owned by your community energy group or could be owned by a private individual or a local farmer or the village pub or whatever it is. And they get together and they form a local energy market. And what they then do is they sell their excess energy to their friends and neighbours, also to potentially local businesses. And the ones that we're involved in are tend to be around these local energy markets. Um, we get a lot of people who when they start getting into community energy, the real thing is that they might live in a nice 1980s built house with a lovely big south facing roof and they can put solar panels on their roof, but their friend down the road lives in a grade 2 listed thatch cottage with absolutely no hope of having any kind of renewable energy installed to it. They're not going to be good enough or they're not well insulated enough for heat pumps. They've got no roof space for solar panels and such like. And then, like in this scheme, they can get together and person A can sell their energy to person B, and they can keep it all nice and local. And those are the schemes that, as I say, we're involved in, and that's what we're sort of going to talk through today for you. So what's the reality in terms of um, where parishes and community groups are today? Parishes, and we deal with a lot of different parish councils and such like, seem to have a real sort of feel for what's going on in their community. They seem to attract the most vibrant and sort of dynamic people who want to do something in their community. And a lot of them care deeply about climate change and how this is affecting their community. And it could be something like if you're a coastal parish, you're worried about sea level rise. And if you're maybe more rural, you're worried about the change to the environment and the climate and stuff. So yes, you have a question.
Actually, I think you'll find
Sorry,
that
I
there's
was giving you applause that you said that the parish has attracted dynamic, hardworking people. Sorry.
All right, fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Um, okay, so the other thing we find with parish councils is many of them already have working groups to look at how they can improve their environments and combat climate change. And a lot of them have the support of their local communities. What we do find is when you start going up the tiers of government, like you get to a borough council or a county council, everything becomes a lot more politicized. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the nature of our governance system. But certainly at parish level, those sorts of concerns seem to be much more dissipated, and people are much more focused on just getting on and doing something good for their community. Um, the other thing we find with the parish councils is they do have access to quite a large pool of resources. So they have access to potentially some land, they have access to buildings, they have access to rooftops. But not only that, that might be directly owned by the parish, but they also have access to their community who have these resources. So in a more rural location, it may be you've got a network of local farmers that you can engage with, or the person that owns the small trading estate down the road, or you've got a village pub or a village shop. So you have access to all these assets that potentially could be put into a pool of assets to create your renewable energy project. Um, and yet we only find a handful of community energy schemes sort of up and running. Whilst there's probably a couple of hundred across the UK, there's 8,500 parish councils in the UK. So proportionally, there's quite a small number of community energy projects running around the UK. So what's causing this? Okay, so the projects that we've been dealing with, we find that you normally have a lead. So somebody hears about community energy, becomes engaged with community energy, maybe has heard something from a neighbouring parish or something like that, and they decide they want to do something, and they tend to go on a journey. And this journey can take 3 to 5 years. And it's about sort of an exploration of understanding what community energy looks like, and then sort of try how do you create a community energy club and sort of go for this. So the things that are sort of blockers is, what do I do? How do I create a community energy scheme, club, co-op, whatever version is that you want to do? So once you've done that, it's then how do you do this? So how do you um, set it up legally? How do you create funding? And where do you go and find that funding and stuff like that? So there's the blockers in kind of the learning that you have to do. Um, Time is another blocker. So, these things don't happen quickly, and that individual or that group that set themselves up have to be engaged for a long period of time. There's a degree of risk. So it's like, oh, well, maybe we can't do it because it's going to expose the group to too much financial risk, or we're not going to get enough people to join our club and stuff like that. And finally, scale. If you're going to set up a community energy group, you need a certain amount of energy to be able to sell to somebody else. You can't do this with one house. You're going to need something a bit chunkier than that to be able to proceed. And so what this session is to try and take you through the blockers and help you unblock them, so that you can move forward with your projects. So what we're trying to do here at Simcot is get you a plan. Okay. every community energy group pretty much goes through the same learning and has to go through the same steps. And as I say, what we find at the moment that can take between 3 to 5 years for the individuals in that group to go through those learnings and unblock those stages. What we're open to do with, and hopefully with some of you guys, is create a simple, repeatable plan that is off the shelf so that if any community group decide they want to do this, we can go, here are your steps. These are the things you need to do, and we can accelerate your learning. So instead of this taking 3 to 5 years, hopefully you can deliver this in 3 to 6 months. Because at the end of the day, we've got a climate emergency going on here. We need to get to net zero, and engaging with parishes and local communities is one of the best ways for us to achieve this. So we want to keep it simple. We want to make it repeatable, and we really, really, really want to help you speed this up. So what does that look like? So what we've titled is Community Energy as a Service. There's a energy as a service is a well-established market out there. So this is community energy as a service. So what are the elements here? So the first one is feasibility studies. What have you got in your locality that has the potential to be used as a renewable energy asset? Now, I have seen some shockers on this. I got a feasibility study from one community group the other day. They had £40,000 given to them. They'd raised grant funding of £40,000 for a feasibility study to look at this particular locality. The report that came back, very nice report, 120 pages long. And at the end of it, there were no actions. It merely said you might want to do some solar panels, you might want to do some wind turbines, you might want to turn the old water mill into a hydro project. But there was no actions at the end of it. And the thing we need to do is, if we're going to do feasibility studies, they need to have actions. They need to have things that can be done at the end of it. In terms of project delivery, it's not that complicated. If we're going to do solar panels, if it's going on a building, then generally it's covered under permitted development. If it's going to be going into a field or on some land, then generally you're going to need a planning permission for it. It's not that, it's literally that simple. In terms of any renewable energy project you're putting in, you're going to have to connect that to the local energy grid. And to do that, you need to get in contact with the distribution network operator, and you need to ask permission. Again, if you know how to do it, it's not that complicated. You simply prepare your proposal, you submit it to them. 4 to 6 weeks later, they will come back and say yes or no. If they say no, they come back and say it's no for this reason, and this is how you solve the problem. Do you want to fund solving the problem? But I've seen projects get 3 years down the road before anybody's spoken to the DNO, and they go and speak to the DNO, and the DNO says, "Oh no, sorry, we don't have capacity in your area to deliver it." So, project management and delivery is something we can help with. Local energy market facilitation. So let's talk a little bit about what a local energy market is. In every area, you have substations. They're generally the thing that you can see at the end of your road or in somebody's back garden. Okay. And then you have something bigger called a primary substation. A local energy market functions at a primary substation level. So all the dwellings and all the businesses that are supplied by one single primary substation can sell and trade their energy to each other in that locality. Okay. You are typically looking at about 10,000 dwellings. Okay. You you're you get businesses on top of that as well. In rural areas, you might have a few less. In built up areas, you might have a few more. You may well find that like a larger town may have a couple of primary substations covering that larger town. And the way the regulations work is that you can use a particular piece of legislation with an energy company, and you can set up this local energy market, and then everybody that's in that geographical region can buy and sell their energy to each other. Okay, so There's a lot more to it than that, but that's basically the premise for it, and that's the definition. What we have found is there's a couple of community energy groups. We got one near Stansted Airport, and there's a couple of primary substations that's covering the area that they want to function in. You can have more than one primary substation, but what you have to have is a club for one and a club for the other. So you might have it branded as one organization, but in terms of the people that are actually going to be buying and selling their energy to each other, they all have to be in the same primary substation. And then the other thing that sort of we can help with is training. So we can, teach people how to do this themselves. We've got some toolkits that we can share. So sort of standard um, processes in terms of how to do things. And also we can help you build capacity. And that comes in two forms. Sometimes it's about, training the people to do this themselves. And sometimes it's people saying, we would like to outsource this part of the process to you to go and do it for us. And we can help with both of those sorts of choices. So let's talk about one that we've done. So this is Whitecombe Village Hall, which is in Essex. We had a very nice leader of the parish council there, Jane Taylor, who engaged with us and basically came to us and said, we want to go completely green on our village hall. So we went along and did a feasibility study for her. It turned out we could get about 30 solar panels onto the village hall. They also wanted to decarbonise their heating, so we looked to install a heat pump for them. And then they wanted a car charger. That's just a standard residential car charger because there was no car charging facilities within the village. And then we also did some battery storage for them so that they could store their solar energy because the hall's used intermittently. What they wanted to do is when the hall wasn't in use, they wanted to store the energy so that then when people turned up in the hall, they could then take advantage of their energy. So what we've got there is a 20 kilowatt battery storage system for them. So we went along, we did all the site surveys for them and such like, and then we agreed some prices, and then we went and installed this for them. So how's this worked out for them? Okay, so the solar panels was about £12,000 to install. The battery was around £8,000 to install, and the air source heat pump, including the plumbing upgrades, was about 12,500 to install. We were able to get them the bus grant for the air source heat pump. So straight away, we were able to get them a £7,500 grant towards the cost of the heat pump. That is payable depending on the who owns the building. So if the building is owned by a charity, then there is no VAT to be payable upon the installation. Obviously, if it's owned by another organisation, then VAT is potentially chargeable, but hopefully you would be able to claim the VAT back. So the other thing that we look to do is how else could we minimise the cost? In this particular instance, the village hall was due for a roof replacement, and they'd been raising funds for about 5 years for a new roof on the village hall. So what we did is we said, well, let's do the two projects together because there are cost savings that could be had here. So we shared the scaffolding cost in terms of the roof replacement, and also we looked to put the solar panels in the roof rather than on the roof. So there was a significant reduction in cost in terms of the re-roofing, because instead of having to re-roof the whole roof, they just went round the edge of our solar panels. So that made it a big cost saving, and part of the cost savings that they made on their roof then helped cover the cost of doing the solar panel job. So they've had this now for about 18 months, and how they're doing. So in the first year, they went from having a £2,000 a year gas and electricity bill. So that's what the parish was spending, to now having no energy bill and generating £1,000 a year worth of revenue from the solar as it stands at the moment. And that's coming from a mixture of selling the energy back to the grid. And it turns out there was one or two people in the village that had electric vehicles and were struggling with charging, and basically pop round and charge their vehicle up. I think they charge about 40p a kilowatt hour for somebody to charge up on their car charger, and it's all automated. You go along, you tap your credit card on the little device, you plug it in, and it bills you for the amount of energy that you're using it, and then it sends the the value of that transaction to the community, to the parish council, less a commission fee for them running the service for you. So as I say, they had a £2,000 a year energy bill that's gone, and now they've got £1,000 a year surplus. We are also looking at some other opportunities that are potentially coming along. They're a little bit more complicated, probably won't go into too much detail here. There's things called aggregation services that are potentially there to help with that. Um, it's about buying and selling your energy at different times of day. But we hope that, if we can get that set up for them, there may be another £500 a year they can earn out of the system. So that's a £3,000 a year saving as it stands at the moment. So how does a community energy system club work? So first of all, you need an anchor site. Okay, so this will be maybe a council office, a school, um, some sort of maybe community housing situation, any community buildings, farms, a landowner, something like that. So you need one site that can create a minimum of 10,000 kilowatt hours a year. So it's roughly a 10 kilowatt solar panel site. Okay, and that's your anchor site. Once you've got one of those, then you can look to start to create your club, and then it will kind of snowball. It can kind of, as people get interested in what's going on and the fact that they're buying and selling their energy to their friends, it can escalate. But to set a club up, you don't necessarily need to build the asset yourself. What we normally suggest is let's start by having a look at what's in your catchment area. Okay. So have you got anybody with a large solar array? Is there a warehouse down the road that's just put a 50 kilowatt system in? And do you know the owner? Do you know the people in it? Is there any farmers with an anaerobic digestion system around? Is there anybody that's built a wind farm or a solar array, on the ground near you? So to get going, it's not necessarily about um, it's not necessarily about having to raise lots of money and build something. You may just be able to find a partner that's already in your area, and again get everything up and running that way. Um, so then we need to talk about the relationships you're going to need to have with other organizations. So at the moment, the only company organization that can set up an energy local market is a company called Energy Local. A lovely lady called Mary has come up with this idea. She's a very clever lady. I think she's got degrees in physics and stuff like that, and she figured this out, how to do this about 4 or 5 years ago. If you look at Energy Local, you can see all their clubs that they've got set up and kind of the business model that they work. And you need an energy company. Okay, so the way that you buy and sell the energy with your neighbors is you set up something called a power purchase agreement. Okay, PPA. You'll hear this quite a lot. And what that PPA does, it says to the generators, it says how much they're going to sell their energy for. And then to the off takers, the people buying the energy, it says how much they're going to buy that energy for. Okay. And you set up this PPA, and the club, the energy, your co-op or whatever club you've set up, are the ones that decide the prices. And then you engage with an energy provider. 100 Green is the company that Energy Local are using at the moment, but Octopus have done this in the past, and we've got a couple of other energy suppliers that are interested in doing this with us. And they basically then do the billing for you. So the people selling the energy and the people buying the energy both have to belong to the same energy company, and they both have to have smart meters, because that's how they track the amount of energy that's produced, and that's how they track the amount of energy that's consumed. And that's basically how you do it. It's a fully automatic system. Once you've got it up and running, the energy company knows what's being produced, knows what people are consuming, and will just send your bill out. And when you get your bill, it will say this is what you've bought from your community energy club, and this is what you've bought from the grid. You are never going to get 100% consumption from your community energy group. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to um, encourage people down the sort of net zero route, and help people get renewable energy assets installed and such like. Um, The other thing that we need to talk about is how you structure your club and the ownership of it. Most of them are done through co-ops. A co-op is a legal entity, and it basically says that you get for if you're a member, you get like one vote in the club. So all members, whether you could be a generator generating 150,000 kilowatt hours a year, and you could be the off takers, each taking 1,000 kilowatt hours a year, but everybody in the club gets one vote. So it's a very democratic way to do it, and it has to have annual meetings, and the minutes have to be published, and all this sort of stuff. So it's a very clear and transparent way to do it. There are other versions that are out there as well. Community interest companies, community land trusts. Have both been used. There are also some people that choose to run it through private limited companies, just from the point of view of the structure and how it's run. So there's lots of different ways of setting this up. When you do set one of these community companies up, then very often you need to figure out what you're going to do if there's any profit from it, if there's any excess revenue. Um, as I say, some companies will choose to, or some communities will choose to reinvest that in doing more projects, and others will choose to put it into other things that the community decide is important. So it could be, biodiversity is very common these days. So they might buy a couple of acres of land, and maybe set up a community allotment program, or they might buy the land and say they want to rewild it, or however it goes. So, but that's for the club to decide what it wants to do with the revenue and the earnings that it can have from this. And then the last thing that we probably need to talk about is how you phase this. So what we tend to find is that there's a lot of excitement around the first initial project, and once that's up and running, then it tends to tail off a little bit. The excitement is kind of over it. The newness is kind of over. And one of the things that we're working with a number of clubs is how to keep that sort of fresh, but also scale. So an example would be, is there some way of putting an offering out to the village to say those people that are interested in having the renewable energy installed on their own homes, whether or not they can join the club as both a generator and as an off-taker. So you may find a situation where there is no community building or no community land in a particular village. That doesn't preclude you from having a community energy club. It just means you've got to think about it in a different way, and you might have to scale it in a different way. Right. How do you fund this? Because that's the first question that everybody comes back and says, okay, well, we don't have any money in our community to be able to do this, so how are we going to do it? There are grants, okay, but grants aren't going to be for capital works. Grants are going to be for feasibility works. It is generally considered more risky to do a feasibility study than it is to actually look at producing a plan and start trying to build an asset. So there are some grants out there. Community energy is moving rapidly up the political agenda. There's a lot of interest in it. Um, so the Great British Energy, the bank that the government has set up to help fund this, has just recruited a new director. And this director has a background in community energy projects, and he's been tasked with the delivery of 1,000 community energy projects in the UK by 2030. Um, Now, the bank's going to lend money; it's not going to give money away, but he's been tasked with delivering 1,000 projects. So there's a big opportunity at the moment to be sort of first in that queue to see how, working with Great British Energy to see how they're potentially going to help this. But you should be able to get some small volume of grant to help, fund your feasibility of the study at the start. Essex County Council at the moment are funding about 8 projects. They're giving away about £3,000 to £5,000 per project to help the groups get set up, get the legal structures set up, and get some feasibility study going on. So you don't need a vast amount of money. And the lottery fund apparently is now looking at community energy projects and stuff. So there are some grants, but it's not going to cover building things. It's only ever really going to cover feasibility studies and that sort of stuff. In terms of actually finding some money to build something, then there's a couple of different ways you can do that. So the one that seems to be becoming very popular at the moment is something called asset finance. You would probably know this as a hire purchase contract or a lease asset finance agreement. And essentially, what you do is um, you borrow some money over a very long period of time, and the idea is that the amount of money that you are paying for the asset is less than the amount of money that you can make by having the asset in play. A lot of this will be driven by how you construct your PPA. Okay, so you might construct a PPA that says for the first 5 years, we're going to be charging 20p per kilowatt hour for our energy. Okay, and we're going to generate all this extra money, and we're going to use that to cover our asset finance. And once we've paid off our asset finance, then what we're going to do, we're going to decide as our community that now we're going to drop our price to 15p or 10p or 12p or whatever the number is that your community decides that it wants to do. If you look at the Energy Local website, they've all their clubs are listed. And if you can go into each club, and in each club, it will tell you what their PPA is. So you can see all the different versions that are out there. Some clubs work on a fuel poverty mindset, so they do it as cheaply as they can. Some clubs work on it differently in terms of looking to generate revenue so they can do other projects. But that's up to the club to decide. The other way that you can potentially raise finance is through community shares and bonds. Okay, a lot of the big projects out there, this is the business model that they use to raise their money. So what they do is they create their club, they go out to the community, they say we want to raise £100,000, we want to raise £250,000, and we're going to do that by issuing bonds and shares. All right, and then those bonds and that people buy them. It's like in any investment, you get the money to go away and do your capital project, and then you basically have to give a return to your investors on that. But again, that's a very, very popular way to do it. There are also ethical banks out there that are very keen to get involved in um, community energy projects. Trudos and Ecology are both very keen. There's another one called Lendology. We've only come across them recently, but again, they're very keen to get involved in community energy projects. And then one of the other things you need to think about when setting up your clubs is how you're going to do the ongoing management of it, and manage your revenue. So, you're going to need to submit books. You're going to need to potentially maybe have some insurance on it, particularly if you've got assets that you own and stuff like that. So you just need to be mindful that when you're thinking about your business model, that you're taking into account, it's not just a case of building these things. You're going to have running costs associated with them as well. Um, if you want help with funding, then this group, Community Climate Action, and this gentleman, Julian, he's actually was part of the Great Collaboration. I believe, Graham, he was one of your directors until not so long ago. He is very, very good at helping community groups find funding. We don't claim to know everything here at Simcot. Our focus is very much about feasibility, about construction, about building things and helping you run them. When we find people that know more than us, and Jules does know more than us when it comes to funding and these sorts of structures, we are more than happy to um, recommend these organizations. So if this is something you'd want to go down a route of, and you talk to us about, maybe helping you with your feasibility study, we are going to be signposting you back to Jules when it comes to helping you find finance and stuff like that, because he is an expert on that and knows far more than we do about how to do this. So he's a very, very good contact in this. So what are your risks when you're thinking about setting up a club, and how do you mitigate that? So the first risk is low liquidity. We don't have any money, is the short version of that. Um, so how do you mitigate against that? Well, it's all about these anchor loads. If you can get these sites, and as I say, they don't have to be sites that you build, they could be existing sites out there, to agree to be part of the club, you've got generation. If you've got generation, you've got something that can be sold, that can be bought by your community. So that generates you a revenue. Once you have and can demonstrate what your revenues are going to be, then you can talk to lenders in whether that's asset finance or one of these ethical banks, or you can put your business case together to go back to your community to do a share or bonds offering. So, you know, your business plan and finding your existing local suppliers can be very important. And if you haven't got existing local suppliers, then doing a thorough feasibility study and knowing what your generation is going to be and knowing what your off takers are going to be will allow you to basically find money. Regulatory compliance or complexity, sorry. Um, this is not rocket science, but it's also not the most straightforward thing in the world. You know, if you Google community energy at the moment, like I say, you'll find 20 different versions of this, and they will all tell you their version is the right version. And as I said before, there's no real right version. But having the right partners to work with can massively resolve this for you in terms of the complexity. So people like us, people like Jules, people like Energy Local, we're all people that can, smooth this out and make this much, much smoother for you. Grid constraints. So as I said before, the number of projects where they spent so much time and effort doing feasibility studies and figuring out what they can do and how much solar they can put here and how much wind they can put there without talking to the distribution network operators, the DNOs, to figure out if they can actually connect it to the grid. So early engagement with your DNOs is vital. It's not difficult, it's not complicated. You just need to know the right forms to fill out and how to fill them out. Again, people like us are experts at this, so we can help you with this and make sure that if you do have a project, it's scaled to what the grid capacity can actually take in the locality. And finally, trust. So this is trust with your community. How does your community trust you, particularly when you start talking about changing energy suppliers and buying and selling energy from other people in your community? Well, that's going to be your governance and your transparency on that governance. This is why a lot of the clubs end up as co-ops. Co-ops are one member, one vote. That can, at scale, be a more tricky structure to manage and run, which is why also there's community interest companies and community land trusts that are getting involved in this. But your annual general meeting, the publishing of your accounts, a clear diagram of who's in charge of this, who's running this, and understanding how when you join your community energy club, your voice is going to count. That transparency and that governance is key to building that trust in your community. If you've got that, then these things can scale very, very quickly. So this is the roadmap we would like to work with in terms of working with you guys. As I say, typically 3 to 5 years from the time somebody gets this idea to the kind of something happens in their community. What we'd like to do is bring this down to 3 to 6 months. So we would like to help you do your feasibility study and get set up and engage with people like Jules and Energy Local and all the other partners we're going to engage with. So you've actually got a viable business proposition at the end of that 6 months. 6 to 18 months, then we'd like to help you establish your pilot projects. So hopefully we would help you find some funding and actually get your local energy market up and running. And then key here is scale. How do we keep this going? How do we expand it to cover as many of the people in your community as wish to be part of it? And then finally, how can we create sort of centers of excellence for community energy? And how can we then use those to share the learnings out to the other communities around there? As I say, this is a very political hot potato at the moment from the point of view that the government really wants to get a lot of these community energy groups up and running because they've figured out that basically this is how you get people to engage with and move towards net zero. There's a lot of blockers in people's mind about climate change and net zero and the cost of it and how to transition and stuff like that. And if your friends and neighbors have done it and your friends and neighbors are talking to you about it, then you have a real chance to progress this. So what we're looking for today, if you're interested, we're looking for some pioneers. So we've got, as I say, 8 groups currently progressing through Essex, but we are looking for some other willing volunteers, pioneers to help join this, to help us get this plan fully finalized and sorted out. That QR code goes to a landing page where you can put your details in if you're interested. The thing to bear in mind, if you're going to join us now, then um, this is not a finished article. We're looking for people who are prepared to put the extra time and effort in to help us get the plan to where it needs to be. If you're thinking that perhaps you're not ready to be a pioneer on this and you'd like to be an early adopter or even you're thinking maybe we would do this in a year, 18 months, you'd like to be one of sort of our community anchors in terms of the scale, please still scan the QR code. Please still fill in your details, and just say where you sit in this scale. If you're up for it and you want to have a go and work with these other new communities that are all trying to pioneer this, that's fine. If you think you'd rather wait 6 months or a year, then as I say, we're more than happy to still to work with you and keep you in the loop in terms of what's going on. But as I say, if you scan that QR code, it will take you to a landing page and you can put your details in, and then we can have a little chat. Um, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So that's me. That's my company. There's my details. That's what we're planning to do for you. I'll get this presentation over to Graham so he can put it out as he see fit. Um, yeah. So do we have any questions?
Good. Darren, thank you so much for that. I think it was a very clear explanation. I suspect it's going to generate a lot of questions. Anyone who wants to raise their hand to ask a question, I've got one so far for John Bitterly, and there are others. I think, given the number of questions in the chat session as well, I'll probably alternate from one to the next. So if we'd like to start first with John Bitterly, if you could let us know your question, please.
Yeah, typically in your experience, what is the sort of the cost to the consumer of energy that comes out of one of these projects? I mean, the electricity is what, 23 to 30 pence a unit at the moment. What are the co-ops sort of rough figures selling at?
Um, Average, I would say, is about 15p.
Yeah,
The cheapest I've seen on Energy Local at the moment, I think, is 6.67 pence that they've decided to do it for. And I've seen them up at the 18, 19p sort of kilowatt hour rate. It all depends on what the group decides is its function. Is it there to help mitigate fuel poverty, which case you go low, or is it there to do other provide other services, in which case you would potentially go a little bit higher because you're looking to generate revenues that can generate profit so that you can invest that profit back into other activities.
yeah. One sort of thing I'd just like to float out there, for um, communities that get fixed community benefit funds from solar developers, which are not particularly useful because they're usually not enough money to do anything major.
Yes.
This may be a good source, a community benefit fund may be a good source of funding something like this to turn it from a not very useful amount of money into an ongoing benefit to a community.
Yeah, it can be a false multiplier,
Yeah,
particularly it does depend on the geographical location in terms of where it is. So, you might find like in Essex, we've got some beautiful old villages, which
yeah,
literally every other house is a listed building in it.
yeah,
And it's really tricky to do anything there. So these sorts of groups can work very well when it's the school sports hall that's had all the solar panels put on, but the schools don't use
yeah.
that much energy. So it can be a real force multiplier. But yeah, if you've got those sorts of funds, they can be good seed funding to get these sort of projects up and running.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just switch to the chat for the next question, which I happen to see the first question came from Dave Faulkner, and he's also one of the people with his hands raised. So maybe, Dave, you could ask your question from the chat and then ask any other question you've got, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Darren. Good presentation. The question in the chat, I think it was just to do with the example you used there, and it was just about you mentioned selling the EV power.
Hmm.
Um, Presumably that's done through a third party. That was just the question there.
Yes. So the parish already had a card
Oh,
provider. I think WorldPay was their card provider, which they used to take card payments for like booking the hall and that sort of stuff. And then the brand of EV charger we got had an app system, and they basically just dotted the i's for them. So we connected their card payer to their app system, and then I think we just stuck like a little label on it saying how much it was. And when the user turned up, there's a QR code on the side of the car charger. They scan the QR code, and I think they pay online, and then the basically WorldPay and the provider of the car charger, they take a commission, and the rest of the money then goes back to the parish.
good. Do it, just about did it themselves then. Very good. Anyway, the main question was to do with, as I understand it, you have to have the same supplier for all the sites, the generators and the offtakes.
Correct.
And currently that's 100 Green
That's the one that local energy is currently working with.
through Energy Local.
Yeah.
And do they do anything different on tariffs? Because I've looked at the 100 Green tariffs and they are generally more expensive than anybody else. So you're immediately on the back foot of moving from what could be your cheapest tariff as a potential off-taker.
Hello, I'm fine, thanks.
Having to have a more expensive basic tariff that you've then got to start clawing back the difference through the match tariff that you get from the generator.
Okay. So you need to be very careful about, if you're setting up a community energy club, that you think everybody is going to be better off as a result of doing this. If that's your aim, you're going to need to set a very low selling price and a very low buying price. The way that 100 Green or any energy supplier is going to make money and therefore want to be involved in these schemes is they want to sell you the other energy that you're not going to be able to buy from your community group. And typically the way that 100 Green have done it is they do a three-tier tariff. So there's an overnight rate, a standard rate, and a peak rate. Okay. And the issue that you have around that in terms of engaging with your community and telling people they're going to save money, it all comes down to personal choice. It's when do you do certain tasks? If you're going to come in from work at 5 o'clock in the evening and put a load of washing on and turn the dishwasher on and put the tumble dryer on and turn the telly on and turn all the lights on and turn the heating on, then you're going to be spunking a whole load of money up the wall very, very quickly. If you And this is one of the things that, when you're doing your community energy groups, you need to make clear to people is this is about helping you help yourself. So if you're going to put your dishwasher on at 10 o'clock at night when you go onto your cheap rate rather than at 8 o'clock at night when you're on your peak rate, you're going to save a whole load of money yourself. So you just need to be mindful about creating your groups with the assumption everybody's going to save money. Personal behavior and personal choice goes a very, very long way to those people that will save a lot of money.
What's the normal pitch to get new off-takers to join the energy club? So that they're going to get local energy, because if they're not going to save money, it's a very different sell, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but the idea is the club is going to generate some money, and that the club can do things with that money to improve your environment and to improve your community. The other thing as well is it's not that they're not going to save money. They may well save money. A lot of it is going to be how you balance your generators with your off-takers. So let's say somebody's just built a 5 megawatt solar panel farm down the road from you, and they've stuck a massive, great big battery storage device next to it, so they can literally supply as much energy as you need at any given time. If you then take the whole village and there's 400 people in the village, say, and they all chime into that, then there's a strong possibility that that's what's going to happen. They're all going to save money. But when you start small and we are going to be starting small, that's less likely to happen. So again, you're looking for people that want to make a difference, want to change. Those people that are struggling to do it on their own buildings and their own things, they've got listed buildings, or they don't have the capital to invest in these projects themselves. There's a lot of people out there that are asset rich and cash poor. They want to engage with their community. They want to engage with net zero electricity and stuff like that, but they just don't have the opportunity. So for them to join their community energy club and feel like they're doing their bit without having to spend £10,000 on putting um, solar panels on their own building can be a really good way for them to feel like they're doing their bit. There's It's more than just the energy; it's the community and how you build that community. Because once you've got that groundswell, then there's other things and other projects that you can take on through this. It's a catalyst, it's a start, it's not an end.
Right, thank you. Let
Thank
me
you.
just move
Yeah.
back to the questions on the chat. So, how big does a community building need to be to generate 10,000 kilowatts? And I've seen that the latest solar panels, the standard size, are now up to generating what, 450
Mhm.
watts a piece, and maybe that'll keep going higher. I don't know.
Um, 30, no, 20 panels will generate 500-watt panels will generate roughly 10,000 kilowatt hours a year on a south-facing roof. You can A large house will, with a single roof facing in one direction, will probably be able to get about 20 panels on it. To be honest, if you're driving around your community and you see some solar panels, count how many are on the roof, and you got to get to 20 to get going, and that's roughly how big it is. So you'll be able to see from your what's the arrays in your local area roughly how big 20 is, and that's a 10 kilowatt system, and that's the bare minimum that you need to get started. If you were, I don't know, in a particular village and you've got a lot of big houses and you drive around and you see 5 houses, each with 20 panels on their roofs, you're almost at the point where you could knock on their door and say, "Do you fancy starting an energy local club with us, or a community energy project with us?" That's the sort of number you need to get going. The thing to bear in mind is you get a 10 kilowatt system, you can probably get 5 club members with that system. There won't be enough energy to go round any more than that. There's no point having 25 club members on a 10 kilowatt system. Everybody's going to be getting 5p's worth of electricity a month. It's not going to work. So you've got to match your generation with your off takers. But if you suddenly canvass your village and you find you've got 100 off takers there, go speak to the farmers. Say, mate, look, I've got 100 people that will buy the energy. Can you put some solar panels on your barn? There's loads of advantages. They got tax write-offs, and they've got a guaranteed income coming in and stuff like that. So, you know, to a certain degree, some schemes struggle because it's a chicken and an egg. Do you get your generation first, or do you get your off takers first? The reality is it doesn't matter. If you've got a group of off takers, you can find generators. If you've got a group of generators, you can find off takers. It's just a marketing thing.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Peter Bates is next in line to answer.
Hi, Darren. Yep. I like the whole idea of community energy as a service, which is a great idea. And I like the idea that you can actually get projects up and running within 3 to 6 months in that respect. I mean, in East Cambridgeshire, although they were 100% funded, we actually had something like 11 community energy projects operating within a relatively short time in that respect. And
Congratulations, well done.
sorry.
I was just saying, well done. I mean, get
Yeah.
11 up and running. That's pretty good going, my friend.
Yeah, great. I was going to say that, yeah, and I certainly will intend to kind of contact you after this meeting and have a chat. I guess the question I've got is, you run a group of companies according to your website,
hmm
and what's the deal that we would have with you, or a community group may have with you?
Yep, that's perfectly reasonable. So I run Simcot Renewables. We're part of a group, Simcot Group. We're based in Witham in Essex. We are a for-profit organisation. Okay. We have two things that we would like to sell you. One is a service package around helping you get set up a community energy scheme. I can provide details around it, but essentially it's about 1,500, 2,000 to kind of get through all your feasibility studies across multiple sites. If it's one site, we do it for free because that's just what we do. We do that every day. But if you've got 10 or 15 sites, then we charge for that. And then after that, it's a £75 per hour sort of fee to get stuff done for you. So one of the big blockers we find is that people run out of steam and time to actually progress things, which is why we offer a service to actually go and do it. We also can refer you into like legal solicitors that have done this sort of stuff before, and refer you to other people like Jules to help find funding. The other thing as well is ultimately, if you are going to build something, we would like to quote to build it. Now, we understand that we can't enter into sort of single supply agreements and stuff like that. That is not transparent. That is not the way we do it. You need to get other quotes. Perfectly happy with that. That's not a problem. But we'd like to be one of the people that get to quote for you. And if we give you a good price and we give you a good service, then hopefully you buy it from us. So that's it. And if none of that's available, if you don't want to proceed with any of that, that's fine. We're more than happy to talk and give you this free sort of advice. That's not a problem. But yeah, we are a for-profit organization, but at the end of the day, we got to be good enough for you to want to spend some money with us to actually make any money. So that's what we're trying to do.
That sounds great. Yeah, and we've got an event which is probably happening in March in East Cambridgeshire. So we'll invite you along and see how far we can progress on that one.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
we go to a lot of community meetings. If you got Teams meet, if you've got like a parish that wants a Teams meeting, they're free. We do those all the time. Um, for the bigger ones, we have done some sponsorship. So we just sponsored, we provided all the lunches for 16 people doing a local energy 2-day training event. I've got another one in Essex. We're sponsoring £500 to come along and do that. I haven't got the deepest pockets in the world, but if there's big events going on where you want people to come along and maybe throw a little bit of sponsorship your way, then we're always happy to talk about that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Pete West, you've been waiting very patiently, so could I jump straight to you, please? You're on mute at the moment, Peter. Pete, you're still on mute.
Hi, Darran. I
Okay.
thought that was really, really interesting and inspiring. Actually, I'm a founding director of Energy Local Bridport, which is a
Oh, okay.
energy market, which we
Yeah.
first in England, we set it up in 2020. And so the good news is we've got 60 householders supplied with electricity at 15p from a farmer-owned wind turbine, 50 kilowatt wind turbine, supplying 50 householders. And in 5 years, nobody has left the scheme unless they've left the primary substation area. So I think that's very positive feedback. I think our biggest issue has been to find an electricity supply company partner. I think Octopus have definitely pulled back.
Mm.
I'm slightly optimistic we have to shift now to 100 Green, which they basically are a company that really support local energy markets. The only last thing I was going to add is this idea of the backup at a time of use tariff, different times of the day, a different price. We found that really successful. And I think really it's going to be rolled out nationally because basically what we're doing, we're balancing the grid by, as you said, not using power at these peak times in the early evening. The government has to turn off wind farms and things and pay them to be turned off. Well, really, it's much, much easier for householders to use power when it's cheapest, when it's available. So I'd say in summary, half of our savings, which are about 15 to 20% of standard electricity costs, half is due to our 15p wind, and the other half is actually due to the time of use tariff. People are making good use of it. So yeah, well done.
Yeah. I think as well with your time of use tariff, battery only installations are going to blow up this year. And the reason they're going to blow up is because sodium ion batteries are going to be coming to the market end of this year, beginning of next year. And if you watch any of the YouTube videos about it, you're going to know that sodium ion is a lot cheaper than lithium ion, and also that um, it's heavier, but that doesn't matter in a domestic setting because you can still get it. So what you're paying £2,000 or £3,000 for now will probably cost you £1,000, £1,500 in 18 months from now. And once you can get battery storage for residential properties at that price point, being able to use all these cheap tariffs and take the energy when your wind farm or your solar panels and stuff like that are making the energy is going to make a massive difference to how people benefit in terms of the cost benefit analysis. So yeah, battery storage is going to be huge in the next year, 18 months, particularly when the sodium ions hit, and then you'll be really raking it in on the community energy.
Thank you, John. Sorry, John Bitterly. Can we move to you, please?
Yeah, I just wonder if you could just help me. I'm struggling with I'm sort of struggling with this a bit because surely from like a parish council, like my parish council, I've got a fairly big parish hall with a fairly big roof. I get that. I've also got some money that someone's given me, so I'm lucky. But I could see a lot of grief with this when I could just sell the money back to my energy provider at 15 pence, if not more, through, seg payment and not have the attendant grief from everybody else, having to set up a group, find suppliers, governance and all that stuff. And I'm just wondering in my mind, why wouldn't I do that compared to going down a cooperative energy group?
Okay, very good question. So, um, the government has changed the rules about how energy companies can find new customers. So they can't do discounted deals anymore. They can't do door knocking anymore. In fact,
Yeah,
there's pretty much no way for energy companies now to actively recruit new customers. So seg payments have become one of the ways that energy companies are recruiting new customers. If you offer a nice big chunky seg payment, then people with existing assets are going to come to you. Um, Now, if somebody like Octopus, if you're an Octopus customer, okay, and you're selling your energy back to Octopus, I think they're offering around 15p a kilowatt hour now.
yeah,
Compared to what you're buying that in the wholesale market for on an average basis, that's probably at 6, 7p in the wholesale market. Okay. So what Octopus and a lot of these other companies are doing is they're kind of hoovering up as many people with renewable energy assets at the moment by offering these high seg rates. But they're not going to last. They can't
right.
last because
Okay.
they're paying so much over the odds of for the energy. Now they can suck up a certain amount of this to gather up these new customers, and it might be a relatively cheap way for them to do it compared to other marketing types. But it can't last because as more energy comes onto the grid, more wind energy, more like when Hinkley Point C comes online and stuff like this, the cost of energy is potentially going to go down. What these schemes do is kind of give you a opportunity to enter into a long-term contract with your community to sell that energy at a fairly consistent price point. So you know that you've got a 50 kilowatt system sitting on your community hall, and that means that you can have 75 community members based in the club. And as a result of that, that means that you're going to be able to guarantee that you're going to get that money over the lifespan of the system,
Yeah,
as long as you keep the club running. So seg payments at the moment are loss leaders. They are out there to gather new customers, and we
right.
don't expect them to last over this period of time. But it's also not just about the money. It's about the
No, no, I do
community.
get that, by the way.
Yeah.
No, I do get
Okay.
the community bit. I think you open up a really interesting point. I do take the point about seg payments. So for those people you look around our neighbourhoods who've got large installations who are getting seg payments, they may be a good source of community power to add to the group later if
Yeah.
their seg payments disappear. So there's
Yeah.
again an additional opportunity potentially coming in a couple of years. My neighbour's just put 18 panels on his roof. He gets a seg payment. He might not get that for much longer at the rate he thinks he's going to get it.
Yeah.
So
And
there's an additional opportunity out there for us.
yes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
also
You explained it very well. Thank you very much.
there's also other things like you probably if you've had it recently, your neighbour's probably got a battery, right? So aggregation services, which is where you utilize you make what's called a virtual power plant. So you take lots of separated assets and you basically run them as one asset.
Mm.
And these are the things that are going to generate big payments going forward. So having a community project where you then can introduce um, maybe battery storage to the people that can't have the solar panels on their roof and stuff, and help them do it, and then have an aggregator that works with all of you across the whole site, then generates other revenues that you're not going to get from energy companies and stuff like that. And again, we've got a number of aggregators that we're working with. They're all 20 something. They're all super bright. They're all computer geniuses programming things in and out, but they are creating some really interesting opportunities to help manage and mitigate the energy in the UK.
No, I think you explained it very well. Thank you. I mean, the community bit's very important, but you just explained. I never quite understood the seg payments anyway. Now I think you've probably sort of straightened my thought out for that. So thank you very much.
Cool.
Stuart, good afternoon. Could we move to you, please?
Yes, thanks. Thank Darren for a very interesting presentation. Um, I'm not sure if I missed it, but did you mention the app which Mary was talking about,
I
which
haven't.
tells you exactly the time of use when you're generating, so you get cheap electricity, and the time of use, which is beneficial for 100 green to know when it's cheapest?
So, and Pete probably knows as much about this as I do. So, Energy Local produce an app. The app shows you when your renewable energy assets are generating. So you can have a look at it and you can make decisions around what you choose to do. So if you are thinking of doing a load of washing or putting a tumble dryer on, you can quickly check your app. You can see that your wind farm or your community solar panels or your community hydro project is currently making energy and sending it back to the grid. And then you can choose to turn your appliances on and actually take advantage of that. I would imagine over the course of the next couple of years that these sorts of things are going to get a little bit more automated. You might suddenly find that Mary can develop it so you get a little text message pop up or a WhatsApp message pop up to say, "Hey, there's spare energy. Have you thought about doing something?" It may even within a couple of years evolve into that those people with battery storage, it then turns their batteries on and starts charging them up. So it's moving in a lot of very, very interesting ways very, very quickly.
Thank you. Okay, at the
And
moment we have.
Stuart is one of the people that we've been doing a little bit of work for in Essex. So he's got I think we're up to, last time I did a design for you, I think we're up to about 80 kilowatts on your community building, weren't we?
Yes, yeah, I was a bit surprised at that.
And mate, I found every roof space I could possibly find for you.
I know.
All right, thank you. At the moment, there are no more live questions, so let me just run over to the chat. Mike Eccles, you asked on the subject of VAT and a charity, does that only apply to CIOs and charities controlled by the Charities Commission, or are we also talking about non-profits, CIC, company limited by guarantee, and so forth?
I don't have knowledge on that subject, I'm afraid. We can, if whatever your legal ownership is, we will do the check, and if you don't have to be paid VAT, then we won't charge you VAT for it. But I don't have enough knowledge to pass comment upon that.
Okay. The next one is not so much a question, just a recommendation from Gordon Coppock. So I'll rather than read that out, I'll just draw everyone's attention to it. By the way, all the chats do go up onto the knowledge base at the end of the session. So these questions or statements will be covered there. Question from another one from Mike. Do co-ops get a VAT concession? Not sure if that's within your bailiwick either, Dale. Sorry, Darren.
I believe the co-ops are registered with are registered as like under a charity status, I think, because they're registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. So I would believe that the co-op would potentially be able to get the VAT. Bear in mind, the issue is the owner of the land or the building that you're putting the solar on, not necessarily the organization itself. So if you're putting it onto a community building and that community building is controlled by a charity, then we don't have to charge VAT. That's the issue. It's where it's being put that affects it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Pete, since you're still here, is your question still valid, or do you think we've answered that one about
No, you've answered it really, really well. I mean, just
Okay.
add on a little thing. As Darren was saying, this really seems to be a growing movement. And in the rest of Europe, there's actually legislation which forces electricity supply companies to offer this metering and billing for community energy groups. So there's legislation proposed in the UK, but we're a bit behind the rest of the Europe on that one.
The person that's been employed by GB Energy to get these 1,000 groups up and running, has all the contacts. He's been working on a strategic infrastructure fund project, which is funded by Ofgem, and it's the project we've been working on, which is how we got into all of this. So there are now people in positions that understand the blockers, and they've been told to unblock them. So they've been told, they can go back to Ofgem, they can go back to the energy suppliers, and they can basically say, no, we're doing this, and that's why these people have been appointed. It's very refreshing to be working in a part of an industry where so many people at all levels of power and control all want the same thing and all seem to be pushing in the same direction. Um, yeah, it's a nice place to be. There's lots of people out there that are prepared to solve problems, and there's regulators that are prepared to change things to solve those problems. I've not come across that in my business career before. It's like you hit the regulation wall and you get stuck. And this time it seems like we're actually going to do something.
Good. Sue, you're still online. Do you think your question about the costs for a parish council using SimCort have been answered for you? And you
Yeah, sorry, I think that has been answered. There is a cost and you'd have to work it out. I don't underestimate a comment of getting planning permission. A solar farm near in a parish near us took a year, but I think it should get easier the more this happens, to get planning. Yeah, it does feel a bit overwhelming. And one of the difficulties is councillor input and getting things on the action plan and all that. That doesn't make it very easy to move forward fast at the parish level and elections, so.
Yeah.
But very interesting, and who knows? Thank you.
If you want a half hour, Sue, for one of your parish meetings, for a Teams meeting to help convey what we've said here, that's free. We're more than happy to do that for you. Just sometimes having an outside speaker come in just helps clarify people, and I'm very excited about this. So hopefully, I pass that energy on to people.
You have. If I can just say two things. First of all, Dale and I, who's also on this call, I think we're part of a group called Battle Solar Town. This is not as volunteers, and our target is to get 25% of the energy used in Battle produced in Battle by solar energy. So that's something that's going on, and we're working with a community energy company already. But as you say, they come in different shapes and sizes. However, I went to visit a school yesterday who I'm sure would have a great potential. They're interested in putting panels and maybe how to make that a doable thing, because it's not within the town of Battle. It's a bit mind-boggling, but I think thank you so much. One, your enthusiasm and making it a little bit easier, and your offer to come and talk to us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, on to Stuart, who's asked a question which I think I've already covered with you, Darren, but we might as well make it public. Does this scheme only work on existing buildings, or does it apply for buildings which haven't yet been built? So they've got a developer who's received planning permission for a site where they're building new homes and a new village hall. Can we use this scheme for the new village hall?
Yes. So the thing to look at is the all the new houses are going to have some solar on them now. Okay. So you can potentially go to the developer and say, we would like to do a community energy scheme. We would like it to be based around this housing development and the village hall. The village hall will probably have solar panels. We've done so many new build village halls on new build sites that could do it. The key advantage you have there is you have a bit of a captive audience, because when you buy the new house, it will have an existing energy supplier. So if your developer will engage with you and help you set up, or you can set up the community energy club, when people move in, they will be signed up onto the the 100 green community energy tariff. And then you have an instant opportunity to say to those people, well, you already signed up to the community energy project. It's now down to you to decide if you want to leave it. And if they're getting cheaper energy, and you can obviously explain the advantages of being part of the community energy, and it's going to, get them cheaper, hopefully get them cheaper energy, and generate these other benefits for the community, then hopefully they will stay. Can't promise everybody's going to stay, but like as Peter said, the only people that have left his club are people that have left the area. You do find that you get a very, very stickiness with the members. People engage with this. They want to be part of it. They want to tell everybody about it, and they generally stay around. So on a new build estate, there's a big opportunity because you can almost set it up as the default option when they move in.
Brilliant. I think I've got to the end of the open questions on the chat. This is the one brilliant question which was asked and then immediately answered by somebody else, which I thought was marvelous. Thank you so much. Let me just check with everybody if there are any further questions. No one is saying anything to me just yet. Okay. It then remains for me to say, Darran, thank you so much. I did think that was a really interesting presentation, and I look
Thank
forward
you
to
for
seeing
inviting me.
that it's worked. And thank everybody else very much. And if I'm very, very clever, I can go on to the website and tell you I haven't got the slightest idea who's going to be talking next week, because Darran was due to talk next week. He came in to help us out today, and that leaves a gap for next week. So I'll do my best to fill it and let you all know what it's going to be. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time. Sorry that we overran, but I think it was worth it. And look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Darran, thank you very much. Brilliant. My camera's
Cheers.
but
Thank you so much, both Graham and Darran. Bye.
Hope
Bye.
to speak to
Care.
some of
Bye-bye.
you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys. Good.